Some people prefer a career where they are indoors, such as a baker, banker, engineer, or teacher. Then there are people who prefer their career to be outside, such as construction, law enforcement, or armed services. During the 18 and 1900s, a popular career was that of the prospector. For years, prospectors would spend their lives in pursuit of an item that may or may never present itself. We are about to learn of one such person. Welcome to another installment of Black Site Files from Unsolved Mysteries. In this installment, we will be hearing the case of Dan Willans. This case first aired on the January 18th, 1989 episode of Unsolved Mysteries. It's believed that due to the lack of information regarding Dan Willans, it could be that this case will never be solved. Claims to the estate of Dan Willans has been made, but as of recording this video, no claim has yet been officiated as being legitimate. Up next, it is the case information. Okay, it is now time for the case information. Name: Dan Willans. It is unknown if this is his birth name. His full name is unknown. There is a possibility that he may have two aliases. Alias number one is Dan Willans or Dalton Thomas Willans, which could be a possible birth name, but nobody knows for sure. Dan's occupation was that of a prospector. His date of birth is unknown. I would venture to guess it could be possibly late 1800s. Age, as of the televised airing, it is unknown. Age, as of recording this installment of Black Site Files from Unsolved Mysteries, unknown. The location was Ontario, Canada. Is this case on YouTube? Yes, you could actually find this case in Season 1, Episode 14. The original televised episode air date, it was January 18th, 1989. Case status. Currently remains as unresolved. People have come forward, but were unable to prove their claims. And which I'm honestly not that shocked. Records were not exactly required back in the late 1800s. So, people like Dan Willans, he probably fell through the cracks. My theory is that I think Dan Willans was his name, and sadly, I think he just simply passed away. Possibly could have been due to environmental conditions. Up where he was, it was notoriously cold. So I would not be shocked if he actually passed away due to the cold, and maybe he fell into the water and he got washed away, Anyway, after these commercials, I will be right back with the case reading.
Chevy's nationwide celebration is coming from May 11th to Memorial Day, so get ready, America, because you're invited to join Chevy dealers in celebrating the arrival of the first Chevy of the 80s, Chevy Citation, and see the other great Chevy cars and trucks that have made Chevrolet #1. Come on, America, get ready for Chevy's nationwide celebration, starting this Friday, May 11th at your Chevy dealers.
Chevy celebration, Chevy celebration, Chevy celebration, Chevy celebration, Chevy celebration.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you are new to this series, this is where I go to the Unsolved Mysteries wiki, and I will read to you the case of Dan Willans. I'm actually quite excited to read this case. I actually follow this case a lot. I always come back and watch this case from Unsolved Mysteries, and I keep hoping that one of these days we hear something. But considering it's been, it's going to be 200 years possibly pretty soon. Who knows? I don't think it's ever going to get solved, and that's what the consensus is. But I would still like to see that this case gets solved, though. But anyway, let's switch over here, and then I will do this. Okay, so if you are new to this series, this is where I go to the Unsolved Mysteries wiki, and like I said, I will read to you the case of Dan Willans. Every now and then I may take a pause to get a drink of water. Got some right here, and I need a wet in my whistle, I guess you could say. This is actually a shorter case, so hopefully it should not take that long to get through it. So here we have the heirs of Dan Willans. Real name is unknown. The case type is Lost Heirs. Location was Ontario, Canada, and the date was 1936. Details. Dan Willans was a prospector in the Canadian Yukon. Hold on, let's actually zoom in. There we go. Let's see, Canadian Yukon. He was one of thousands of men who traveled there, hoping to find gold and become rich. He settled in the mining town of Haileybury in Ontario. By 1925, he was well known in the town, becoming close friends with the other prospectors and often playing poker games with them. However, he was private and told little about his past. One of his friends believed he was previously in the military, but he never confirmed this. So we have a guy who people said that he was kind of secretive. He really never told people that much about himself. And ultimately that comes at a cost. If somebody dies, where like if you don't know much about that person, they die, shit happens, One night, Dan and his mining partner Bill Cochenauer were told that there may be gold in Red Lake, 850 miles west of Haileybury. For over a month, they journeyed through the desolate outback of Ontario in order to get there. After spending several months there, they finally found the gold that they had been searching for. Soon, a gold mine sprang to life at Red Lake. Soon after, the city of Red Lake was formed nearby. The mine drew $45 million worth of gold, which would be worth over $1 billion today. Wow, that's a lot of money. However, Dan was not interested in running it. He enjoyed panning for gold instead. He would often spend months alone in the wilderness doing so. Dan also seemed to have a double life. When he wasn't out in the wilderness panning for gold, he was living as a cultured gentleman. Every autumn, he would take over an entire floor of the elegant King Edward Hotel in Toronto and entertain his friends. He kept up his double life for several years. Then, in fall 1936, he mysteriously vanished while on one of his prospecting trips. After several weeks, Bill began to search for him. He went to Dan's cabin and found nothing out of the ordinary. Although a search was conducted for him, no trace of him was ever found. I think, honestly, it's like I said in the beginning, I think possibly when he was, hold on. When he was on this excursion, basically, I think he could have got hurt. And if it was winter that he disappeared, he may have got hurt. And back then, hospitals, medical centers were not as prevalent as they are now. And considering that he must have been out in the middle of nowhere, if he was hurt, let's say like a broken leg. If he was hurt and he had like a broken leg, that could have been like a death sentence back then, especially in the early 1900s. I hate to say, but I really don't think he survived. I think that he got hurt. He tried to take care of himself. He ended up just kind of, succumbing to the elements, basically. Several theories emerged about Dan's disappearance. The main theory was that he had gotten lost during one of his trips and died in the wilderness. That could have happened also. However, some of friends, I think it should be some of his friends, do not believe that he would have gotten lost. One friend, Joe Perkins, believed that he had decided to go back to his elegant lifestyle. Others, however, believe that he was killed after a poker game, and that his body was thrown down an abandoned mine shaft. There has been cases on Unsolved Mysteries where, a poker game would lead to the death of a person. Like the St. James Hotel, there was a case. There was a incident at the St. James Hotel where there was like a poker game, and reports are that this poker game was going on for quite a long time, and the poker game finally ended, and the person, there was a winner. Well, that person won, and the person who lost their money didn't take too kindly to it. He followed the person out into the hallway and shot him dead. There was that case, and then there was the many, many cases of murder and everything in a location called Deadwood. It was actually covered in Unsolved Mysteries. It was a ghost case. So I would not be shocked that possibly somebody who had a habit of winning poker games like what's his name? What's his name again? Dan Willans. Sorry. If he was known for winning, he may have won, and the person who lost their money may not have taken too kindly to it. Okay. Along with the mysteries surrounding Dan's disappearance, there is also the mystery of his past. It appears that he was originally from England. He was skilled as a horseman and at cards. He never married, but may have had a sister in England. Dan's unclaimed estate in 1936 was valued at $71,000. Since today, it has increased to over $100,000. Also, his estate may include $850,000 from his shares in the mine that belonged to him and Bill. See, that's the thing. If he was just going out, to do some prospecting, he would probably go back to where that mine is, that way, because he was part owner. I cannot imagine somebody who was part owner of a mine just going out and never coming back. I think he either possibly he got lost, or like I said, he could have got hurt and he ended up succumbing to the rough elements, basically. Terry House, a researcher that looks for missing heirs, has discovered that Dan Willans may not even be his real name. Terry believes that his real name was Dalton Thomas Willans. It is also believed that he has heirs somewhere in Britain and the United States. If they are found, they could receive an estate of up to $3.5 million. Extra notes. This case first aired on the January 18th, 1989 episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Results. Unresolved. Within days of the broadcast, a possible relative of Dan named Davy Willans came forward. He claims that his grandfather, Harold, then 11, came from Britain. Came from Britain to the Ontario in 1895. It is believed that he traveled to Ontario with a relative, and that a cousin had also lived in Ontario at some point. Davey believes that I'm going to have to go through and kind of clean up this wiki, because there is a lot of grammatical errors here. He believes that was Dan Willans. Davey flew to Toronto to meet Dan's friend Joe Perkins. They compared pictures of him with some of Harold and Davy's great-grandfather John. Both agree that there appears to be a resemblance between Dan, Harold, and John. However, without DNA, there is no definite determination that Dan and Dave were related, and it is unrevealed if Davy and his family received any of the money. Now, this is, I'm going to sound a little bit of a jerk, and that is okay. That's okay. I never claim to be a good boy. That's why I have that warning at the beginning of this video. I may say things that may upset people, and that's okay. First here, I'll do these pictures real quick. We got a pic. Oh, hold on. We got a picture here of Dan Willans, Davy Willans and Joe Perkins, and they're looking through pictures. And then we got this picture. It's of John Willans, Harold Willans, and Dan Willans. And I think that, oh yeah, and then that's it for that. Okay, so I went through all that. So, but anyway, I watched this case. I watch this case a lot, to be honest, because I keep hoping that one of these days I'll watch it and they'll have an update that basically saying, congratulate, big news. Some heirs were located and all that, This Davy Willans person, oh my God, I'm sorry, it may just be me, but he rubs me the wrong way, ladies and gentlemen. He rubs me the wrong way. Maybe it's because I don't have that much family left, especially where I live. I'm like I think I'm the only person left in my family in this area. If I learned that I had another family member, even though they may be dead, I would be like really interested. Oh, like really another family. Who are they? What do they do? Are they still alive? Like are they nearby? I like to say hello. This guy, instead of actually sounding like he was interested about Dan, Davey, he was more interested about like what he can get. And he openly said, watch the video. I'm going to put the link to the video in the description below, like I always do. And he was literally like, if the Canadian government's holding money that's meant for us, then we should have it. Motherfucker, you didn't even know who Dan Willans was until this episode of Unsolved Mysteries. They didn't even know that Dan Willans fucking existed until this episode of Unsolved Mysteries. It's just upsetting for me. It's like, really, you there is a person from the distant past who apparently led an interesting lifestyle. He was a prospector. Apparently, he was a successful prospector. He was a nice people person, apparently, because he was able to, bring his friends to a hotel that he rented out, during the fall. I think they said it was. This guy was interesting. And all Davy Willans could do was really just care about the money. And that just pisses me off. That just rubs me the wrong way. Part of me is like, I hope that he never gets the money. Because to me, that's all that from the video, that's all it really sounds like that he cared about. Well, if he has money, it's like, and it's like, what the fuck, dude? Like, it's just upsetting. It's just upsetting. And I know that, people will say, well, that he may be interested in Dan, but from the way he carried himself, it just feels like he cared more about the monetary gain, basically. And to me, that just drove me nuts. It drove me nuts to like no extent. When I was younger, I'd be like, really? 30 years later, I watched this case and I'm like, motherfucker, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's like, fuck it. Yeah. Okay, enough of that. Yeah. Sadly, there is not much here. They believe that the Willans case will never be solved because of the fact you need DNA evidence to help close these cases. And since Dan is gone, nobody knows where Dan is. All they have are these pictures, and that's not enough to prove that that's not enough to prove that you are who you claim to be. Like, I could literally go out there and go, I'm a long lost relative of Dan Willans. I'm a long lost, and without DNA, it wouldn't mean shit. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I just, I'm not going to go back into that rant. I'm not going to go back in that rant. But sadly, it looks like this case may never be solved. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. When I return, it will be with my final thoughts, so stay tuned and I'll be right back.
Look! Wow! It's the Chief!
Meet the Chief, the four-wheel drive Jeep Cherokee Chief. Jeep country is where he roams.
Here he comes.
The Chief's rugged enough to handle almost any terrain.
Look at the size of him.
With huge all-terrain tires, massive frame and suspension at high ground clearance.
He's a brute.
But beautiful.
You'll know him by his markings. The Chief.
Sure seems friendly.
The Jeep Cherokee Chief. We wrote the book on four-wheel drive.
Okay, it is now time for the final thoughts, and basically we have a true blue mystery here, ladies and gentlemen. We have a guy who disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to him. One group thinks that he could have got lost while navigating the wilderness of Ontario. I think that he could have got hurt, and he could have succumbed to the wilderness. Who knows? Maybe aliens beamed him up, Nobody knows what happened to Dan Willans, and that's, that makes this a true mystery. And to top it off, we have possibly a large estate that is, waiting to find, some rightful owners. Although I would greatly hope that if one of these days, if or somehow that rightful heirs come out and are determined to be his what's the word I'm thinking of? His heirs. I thought there was another word for heirs, but I don't want to say offspring. No, not offspring. But if they were related to him, I would hope that they would at least take a little bit of time and just, to get to know know what he used to be like, what he used to do, I would hope that they would find, that they would be really interested in as a person compared to what it is that they can just kind of benefit from, Because, like I said, that's what I would be like. Money would be nice, but I would actually like to know who this guy was and what it was that he did to the point, where that could justify like him leaving me all this stuff, Money is nice, but I would like to know, like, what, he must have been really cool at what he did, He must have been really good at what he did. I would like to know what it was that he did, like how he learned to do all that stuff, But yeah, so as of recording this, there's been no heirs found. And I honestly don't think there will be. But that is why I like to make these videos. I like to make these videos just to keep the light shining a little bit, as long as somebody continues to cover these cases, then they're not truly forgotten, are they? But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. As always, it is the end of this installment. Next time, ladies and gentlemen, we are done. We are done with season 1, episode 14. I can't believe it. I was actually able to get the cases covered during my vacation. Starting tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, we have the review of season 1, episode 14 of Black Site or Unsolved Mysteries. I will give you my thoughts, my ratings, my review, and all that shit, And then I think also I will be doing the preview for season 1, episode 15 of Black Site Files from Unsolved Mysteries. That's right. The train just keeps moving, ladies and gentlemen. The train just keeps moving. See what I'm doing with my hand? What I'm doing with my hand? That's like the train. It just keeps moving, ladies and gentlemen. It just keeps moving. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get to episode 15. Because we got a whole bunch more cases, ladies and gentlemen. A whole bunch of more cases, and I cannot wait to start covering them for you. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have had a great evening watching this video, learning about Dan Willans. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, feel free to click that subscribe button on YouTube, that like button on Facebook, and I will see you next time. My name is Jeff, aka GCurse, wishing you all a great day. Stay safe, everybody. Peace out.
It's something to see when the Pepsi generation plays the game. One flick of the wrist, it's a whole new twist, and football's not the same. Come on, come on, come on.